Hey guys, T-Bull here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Kagero, the Tier 7 Japanese Destroyer. You can see my Tanaka build on the screen. Notice perk 3, there's the torpedo increased distance, which I had selected at that picture. I go back and forth between that and the first option, which is decreased torpedo reload time. I'm leaning a lot more towards the decreased torpedo reload time. You already have a very good distance, and it's hard enough to hit targets at 10 kilometers, but 10.6 or whatever it ends up being, even a little bit harder. So that picture is a little bit outdated when I took it, at least on my current thinking. You'll notice I did have Swirsky, the Polish DD captain who lowers concealment in all ships, as an inspiration. I'm planning on going a full concealment build on this. Once I move him up to level 11, we're going to throw Eric Bay on there as well, who specializes in destroyer concealment particularly. So that's my intention with this build, at least. That's always subject to change in the future. So this video we're going to try something a little bit different. I got a match here on Estuary. I'm going to show you about the first half of that one, which is, it contains the more interesting parts. Then I got a shorter match on North, and then I got a little bit of a ripper that I'm just going to throw here on the end as a bonus game. But this one is, I believe, upgraded torps, definitely not upgraded hull. So this was earlier on in the Kagero grind. What you want to keep in mind when you're contesting these points, and if you noticed when I pulled up the roster, they had two Bensons, a Jervis, and a Kagero. So I'm staying outside of the cap to not alert them where I am exactly, but I'm trying to let this Benson sail into me. Ideally, my team would shoot him a couple times once I have him spotted, and then once he pulls into range to spot me, then I fire at him. So didn't look like we got a lot of support from our team there, but that's a play you can consider making, especially if you're playing in a division. The Kagero is going to, in general, outspot the other destroyers, but I don't necessarily want to go toe-to-toe with a Benson player, at least if they know how to shoot properly. So once he started shooting at me, I popped a smoke. Looked like he knocked out my engine or whatever, so I repair that. But because I'm spotting all these targets, there's no point in me sitting in smoke. In fact, the only thing I'm likely doing is just going to track those torps from the Benson. Whether or not he's in between the reload, I don't know. But there's really no point in me sitting there in the smoke for too long. So I'm trying to get behind this island. I'm going to shoot this Iowa, one, to reset him, because I don't want to give up A. It's kind of the whole point down here, and B, we're also trying to get some fires, which we do get there. And I knew it was going to be undetected briefly after shooting, so no problem. We get the fire, and then the Iowa actually burns out, so we do get a kill there. Now notice the torp placement. I do have smoke behind there, which I suspect that Benson's still in. But I essentially tried to cover as much of that gap right there as I could from that angle. There's a high likelihood that that Benson's going to come sailing back towards us to harass us. And you can see there we got torps that we did screen for those guys, so they're alerted for those torps. And there he is. He kind of pulls out here. So even though that was kind of a blind fire, trying to catch him into the smoke, it was also anticipating him leaving that smoke and kind of pursuing those ships that he had seen back toward the rear there. So that was the idea behind those torps, and it did end up working there. Now at this point, we have two objectives. They have two objectives. I have a clear shot at this one. They just flipped this one, but as long as I keep an eye on the Sharn horse, he's the only one guarding it. So I'm going to slip into here, use the smoke to my advantage. You know, just because the enemy puts the smoke down, it's on the map, it's a feature on the map, so you can utilize it once they're dead, or even when they're alive, for that matter. But I'm going to just sit here, begin to capture this thing, and then we'll pull up the torp tube, or the torp viewer here, and keep an eye on him, see what he's doing. So domination mode, I mean, just capturing this cap alone is going to make it very likely that we win this game. We're up a ship at the moment, but that's no guarantee of anything, as you've undoubtedly seen if you've played this game more than 2 or 3 matches. But here I'm just pulling forward to keep this island in between us here, and then again we got the torp view aim indicator up, so I can see he's essentially sitting still, which is fine. You know, all I'm trying to do is just sit here long enough to capture it, and then we'll start thinking about killing him. But what I do, I lay torp salvo down in case he does pull forward. And then I try to give him a little bit of a love tap there. A lot of times when ships get shot, they'll immediately throw it in, like if they're backing up gently, they'll throw it in full throttle forward. So that was what I was attempting to do there. He didn't necessarily fall for it that time. But that is a play that you can make. There's a lot of player tendencies in terms of psychology that you'll kind of learn as you play. And just shooting a ship startles the driver a lot of times, and they just immediately kind of panic and react. So that's a play I do make quite a bit, especially if they're backing up, because backing up they're going slower than they're going to go forward, so they tend to just immediately shoot it forward here. Now here I try to swing around the island, get those launched. Ideally I would have not got spotted, but we did have to poke up just a little bit to get those down. And once those secondaries start going off, that's like an alarm clock going off for them, you know. And you can see his guns are pointed at me, so he was looking at me, and I figured he was going to slam on the brakes and miss those. For some reason he didn't. I don't understand why not, to be honest with you, but he did get hit with one of those. And because he already burned his damage con, now he's stuck with a flood, which is going to be fatal for him. You know, he doesn't, unless, you know, he can't save himself, basically, and then a friendly does whittle him down a little bit to speed it up. So we end up getting a kill there. Now this match, I was considering playing the whole thing. I think the whole match is good, but essentially what happens is I go to cap the south spawn, or the south point there, and it's kind of a drawn out duel with another destroyer. So rather than focus on that, I figured I'd just put the results up here for you, and then we'll check out another match on north. This match, I'll verify when it pulls up here, but I believe it's a fully upgraded, or it's at least 2/3. You can see there you have some more HP, so now we got the torps upgraded and the hull upgraded. Destroyers, I'd say a lot of times you're better off doing the torps first and then the hull and then whatever else. Germans will take a look on Monday when we do the stream when they're released. They have some different upgrade options, so maybe we'll formulate a different plan for those. But for the first three nations, destroyers, I would go torps, then hull, then it's typically main battery range. Cruisers and battleships, I'd usually recommend the hull first. There's a lot of subtle upgrades, including a rudder, that are important for those ships to upgrade. So usually the hull is going to make the biggest difference in those ships. But anyway, here on north, what I'm primarily doing is swinging wider and spotting. Again, you can see we're allowing the enemy to get in the cap there, and then we're trying to scout him and then just stay out of their range. Now on this spawn on A on north, a lot of times the two teams kind of collide at each other really tight to that island. So if you play this map wide, like over here, or you play maps like Two Brothers wide, and I'm talking about destroyers, it's going to allow you to get a lot of good scouting in, potentially miss being counter detected, and when you're launching torps, then you're more likely to be shooting them at broadsides as opposed to nose on situations, which are a lot easier for them to dodge. So here we got some torps down, we do throw them into the smoke, and we do catch that destroyer with one of them, which of course takes his cap points down and puts him almost to 0 health, but he briefly was detected, we shot him, and that was the end of him. Now for the Kagero, you don't have to be as afraid of other destroyers as I think a lot of players are inclined to be, but you do need to be careful around them. So right now I'm trying to identify where they are. You got one actively spotted on C, and then the B's been captured without a ship being detected on there, so we can assume that's the other destroyer. But destroyer fights with the ship, you're trying to utilize your concealment first shot advantage, because you're in general going to spot them first, so you want to get at least one hit on them, possibly two. Then you can pop smoke, especially if you have a teammate that's spotting them, and that can quickly turn the fight in your favor. The guns on this ship are decent, you know, they're not horrible. In fact, a lot of the, I'd say probably tier 5 through 7, the Japanese destroyer guns are kind of underrated. Now granted, they're no Mahan, Benson, Fletcher, Kidd, you know, they're not USN destroyer guns. And they're frankly not even as good as the Royal Navy. But, you know, they're fine. They do some damage, so There you can see we clipped out the Scharnhorst with the torps. I did lay one salvo for him, and I did one for the Hipper. That's a play you can decide to make once in a while. I mean, odds are one of those ships is going to turn away. Like you can see that Hipper's kind of stopped on the brakes, so I figured sometimes if you lay one salvo on two different ships, you're more likely to get a hit on one of them. But if you're going to do something like that, you need to be sure that no ship is going to detect those torps in the water, because once they're spotted by one ship, then they're permanently spotted until they fizzle out. So like if there's a destroyer that's screening for the torps, for instance, or any other ship that screens for them, that's going to limit the effectiveness. So if you do split target torp launches like that, you want to make sure to do them quickly so that by the time they get close enough to the first ship, the second salvo is already going towards the other ship, unless they're spaced far enough away where that first ship can't spot the second ship's salvo, if you understand what I'm saying there. So there we did get some more torps in the water. You did see the sonar going, spotting us, but I wasn't concerned about that because we had already seen his torps launched, which was the biggest threat. That, you know, given how much health he had and given the fact that we hit a nice torpedo spread he wasn't going to miss, I was willing to take a couple shots from that Hipper just to put him away, but due to supporting fire from my team and my own fire, we were able to put him down pretty quickly. I know there's a lot of players out there that are kind of disappointed with the Kagero. They strongly prefer the Akatsuki because the Akatsuki has 3 launchers, Kagero only has 2. Kagero has 8 torps altogether, Akatsuki has 9. But, and that's fine, you're entitled to your opinion. I disagree with it strongly. I think the Kagero is an extremely good ship. I think it's probably the best destroyer in the game. I don't know if I want to go down that road, but it's a very strong ship. Awesome detection or concealment, but the torps, 5 kilometers or 5 knots faster on the torps, and about 4K more damage per hit. And that 5 knots in the water, that makes these things extremely difficult to deal with. Now this is I think this was the last Tier 7 I unlocked out of all the initial Tier 7s that were in the game. So I'd obviously dealt with Kageros playing all the other ships, but once I got these torps and once I got the torp package installed on this thing, that's when I started to realize how strong the ship really was. And due to the speed of these torps, you can consider them extremely accurate. I'd say they're the easiest torps in the game to hit anyone with currently. And by the way, they hit extremely hard, so that's an extremely powerful combo. Quick reload, again, I don't know exactly. I have 3 different replays here. I was fiddling around with the builds, especially in that 3rd skill like I mentioned, but I would recommend just going with the torp reload. And taking a look at this game, I thought the Fletcher was so stuck on the beach that he wouldn't even be able to dislodge himself, so that's why I fired both those directly at him. But as soon as he started firing at him, he kind of managed to dislodge himself. But the torp reload on the Kagero, on my current build, 80.6. For reference, the Akatsuki is 66.1. That's another reason that some people prefer that ship. Again, that's a valid opinion. I just personally like the Kagero's firepower. You know, my current build, I got 70 knots on the torps. Akatsuki's, I think, are 65. And once I get Tanaka boosted all the way up, I think they could go up to 71, maybe even 72. I haven't take that close a look at it, but that's extremely fast, extremely hard to avoid, you know, and because they're traveling so fast, especially if you're getting close to your targets, which you can because of the really good concealment on the ship, you can really just nuke them before they can do anything about it. So, very good ship. Now here, looking at this game, again, this Fletcher did get into the smoke. I'm going to rush him just because there's multiple threats. And he'd already launched his torp, so I'm not worried about that. Again, he was stuck on the beach. I don't know if this guy Maybe he left some guys behind the first time and tried to go back for him. But I'm trying to use his smoke now to kind of maintain cover. Don't want that IO to shoot me. You can see there the sonar goes off. I'm not 100% sure I knew what kind of cruiser was next to me. I think it's a New Orleans. But I'm content to be spotted by that thing if I don't think that Iowa can shoot me. That's a long shot for the Iowa. He's got someone shooting at him anyways, so I think he's got bigger issues, but I didn't know if that cruiser was pushing forward. I decided I gotta at least get the torps lined up on him though. So right there, I wish I would have launched him kind of blind fired, especially when those secondaries, I don't know if that was his main gun or secondary going off, but see, it took a little too long to get the torps in the water. That's an instant deletion salvo, but he was able to kill us there as well. So that one ended up being a really high scoring game as well. I think both these games were in the 3000s. And that's a good look at Kagero. You know, a lot of those points were from playing the base, defending the base, capturing the base, stuff like that, spotting for targets, all that stuff. I did include a Ripper here as well. I was inclined to just let this one roll without narration, but you've been such a great audience, I guess I'll go over this one too. This one's an 8v8 match. Must have been a later at night game. Again, we're at the lower HPs, so I think the torps were upgraded here. I'm not 100% sure. It's either stock or torp upgraded. Same with that game on Estuary. That could have been a stock game. I don't know. I don't think there's any way to tell. But on this map, on this side, the destroyers I see playing the side usually don't play it very well. You need to get out here as far to the east as you can, as quick as you can. Spot the targets on the other side of this island. That'll allow the ships behind you to utilize this big island right here. They can lob shells over. And because your opposing destroyer is likely doing a poor job of scouting your side, they should be able to essentially fire on the other side for free. Now this side could launch planes and get detected that way, but you should get some early advantage shots in at least. So that's what I'm doing here. I mean, if I get chances to lay the torps down, cool. And you know, it looks like we're sighting that Mayoko in for that. What I'm primarily doing is, you know, spotting for the team. Now I do identify 3 targets here. Keep in mind it's only an 8-ship match, but even if it was 9 ships, because there's 3 here, there's likely not a destroyer over here, so I can play a little bit looser. You know, I believe the spawns on this map are 3-3-3. I could be wrong about that, but I don't believe so. So that's something you can, as you learn the maps and the spawns, like Haven, for instance, there's like a side that gets 6 and then one side that gets 3 and stuff like that. But you can, as you learn the spawns, you can kind of use that knowledge to your advantage here. So I'm relatively unimpeded. You know, like I say, all I'm trying to do is keep these guys lit. Now the guys behind me don't seem to be doing the greatest job shooting at them. Unfortunately, that's, yeah, I don't know. It looks like they're all sailing away. So, you know, I'm playing this how I would recommend playing this anyways. I mean, as a destroyer, if you can keep these guys lit. What I want to do as a cruiser or a battleship, I want to use that big island that's to my southeast currently as cover. I want the destroyer to move forward, light those targets. Then I can just bomb on these guys till they sail off to the east. They normally turn tail, start sailing off to the east, and they'll get behind those big islands, and eventually they'll be out of range. But you can get a lot of free damage. All it takes is the destroyer moving forward, spotting the targets, and then utilizing the cover. But because none of my team's inclined to help me here, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. Now we do have an Iowa doing what Iowas are wont to do, and that's move backwards. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, what are, you know, maybe they are shooting at some targets. Maybe I'm just missing the shots going back and forth, but I don't feel like there's a lot of action going over here. So why is he so far back doing it? I mean, there's some incoming shots there finally. So maybe I'm just missing them. Maybe I'm calling the game incorrectly, but I'm going to show you guys some brawling Iowa play, by the way. I got some nice games with Lee now that I got Dewey in a desk job. He's not piloting my Iowa anymore, but I like to play the Iowa a lot more actively than I guess almost all Iowa commanders do. But that's fine. We'll talk about that in about a week or so after we get through the German destroyers. But anyway, I mean, if they're going to just sit back here as far back as they can, we're just going to punch through and torp them. And that's something you can do a lot in the Kagero. I especially like to do it against these Iowas or whoever's just sitting way in the back. Again, you have really good concealment. And if you can keep an eye on the map, you identify situations where destroyers aren't going to be spotting you. Either you slip by them or you just see them on a different part of the map. Then you can get in behind enemy lines to these back line guys. And in general, all they know how to do is just sit back here and aim. They don't know how to counter or anything. So I get great joy taking my Kagero deep within enemy territory and just absolutely destroying them with these torpedoes. So again, relatively quick reloading. I don't feel like there's a lot of downtime once you get them off, especially if you're firing those torps at long range salvos. By the time they get to the target, you're almost reloaded. And, you know, conversely, when you're playing against these things, if you're starting to get unidentified, like ghost salvos of torps coming in, you kind of have to start taking risks to get rid of them. Like an unattended Kagero that's just going to sit undetected by your squad or your division or your fleet or whatever it's sitting by. Give it a long enough time and it will kill all of you, and there's really not much you can do about it if you're just going to sit there cowering behind these islands. So, you know, we whittled down this Iowa with some level of support from my team. I'm not exactly sure how much, but, you know, he does have some fire coming in. But now we got this Mayoko and the Colorado. They're bunched up together. This is the dream scenario with these fast-moving torps. And, you know, if you check both targets and they essentially have the same aim indicator, go to town. Just start going to town and launch those babies. You can see your eyes popping the smoke just to get some fire going. I want to kill that Iowa. Someone else snagged him. That's no problem. We're going to put some fire on the Mayoko. Like we talked about earlier, as soon as you shoot these ships, they tend to move forward. So he was reversing by shooting him. I got it in his mind. He's got to reverse. So now he starts popping forward. And that's pushing him into this salvo. And he gone. And by the way, his buddy Colorado, we're going to pump a bunch of holes in the side of his ship too. Take him from basically full health all the way down. And he should have been he-goned as well. You know? I mean, it's a miracle he wasn't. But he's not going to last long. And that's because the Mayoko, it was his job to kill me. I understand I had whatever that ship is to my right there. That was preventing him from actively getting towards me. But he's got the sonar. He's got to take a little bit of a risk. Just get rid of the destroyer. Or they needed to be more aggressive killing the ship that was supporting me. I understand your Iowa is just sitting there backing up. In my mind, that's fairly worthless. But whatever. So the Kagero is kind of the culmination of a really strong line. The Japanese destroyer line, outstanding. I really enjoy all three destroyer lines that are in the game. German destroyer is coming up Monday. I will be streaming that. So if you're interested, stop by. I suspect those are strong too. We'll find out. But they all have really different play styles. And this one's obviously the most stealthy, the most torpedo focused. Yeah, it's quite an enjoyable line. Again, you can say the Akatsuki's better than this. You can say the Kagero's better than the Akatsuki. It doesn't really matter. They're both two very strong ships at the end of it. And the Fubuki's very good as well. So, I mean, you have tier 5 through 7 on this line is outstanding. And I believe on the PC, they actually have a gunboat line of Japanese destroyers as well. So I'm assuming that'll show up at some point. Where that split will take place, I don't know. If you're from the PC and you have some intel, maybe you can leave it in the comments below. But those, from what I understand, are pretty decent destroyers as well. So very strong line of destroyers. Now what we're doing here, I mean, we do have some support on our cap. So I'm just going to go forward, try and capture their base. Again, if you're on the base, you know, you're getting points from just sitting on there, even if you don't fully capture it. So that's a good way to increase the score and help your team win. Obviously, this Iowa's, you know, really the only thing that's stopping us from winning the game from capping. So move forward, and I'm just going to see if we can get some more damage. Now capture the base. I think you're better off defending your base more than you are attacking the enemy base. I think most players' ideas about that are opposite of mine, but I think a lot of times those ideas are responsible for losing the game. But again, because we do have ships down there to defend, and we have enough ships here to aggressively sink this Iowa and accrue capture points, then I think it's worthwhile. But if you're ever 50-50 on whether, you know, it's not who gets to the cap first. Even if you get to the cap first, if they shoot you, you lose your capture points. So if you get there first, someone shoots you, now they're there first for however long they've been there. And if you have someone shooting them, then it just comes down to, am I trusting my random teammates to win this game for me? Or am I just going to go defend the base myself because I'm more confident in my own play than randoms, which often let me down. So again, if you're ever even slightly unsure about which is the better play, just go back and defend the base. Here, this Iowa, I have full health. Surprise, surprise, the Iowa's backing up. I don't know. I guess that's what they teach you in USN Naval Academy. just punch it in reverse, Dewey. That's like always going through his mind when he's out there. But I mean, you could be in full health like this. You could actually just go in there full bore and get really close to him. But because of the speed and you know, we close the distance relatively close, that we're able to get some of these shots in for a fairly high damage game. So that's the look at the Kagero. Again, a really strong ship in my mind. I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, you should consider subscribing. I got a lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions for me, comments, leave them below. Love to hear from you guys. And we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.